From Dragon 360, this is Digital Banter, a podcast focused on modern marketing tactics and driving real business results. And now, here are your hosts, James and Zach.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Digital Banter. I'm Zach. Of course, I'm here with me is James.
Long time no see, everybody.
I know it's been a minute, and I'm back, so don't worry. No more Andy for now. We'll see. We'll see if we bring him back. But I'm back. You know, things are going to run smoothly. It's gonna be a good conversation. James and I wanted to kind of get back in the swing of things. We've been doing a lot of varying, guests on here, talking about some hot topics that we're seeing either on LinkedIn or some of our dark social groups, or things that we're talking about internally. And really, what we really want to focus on is something that I think James and I have just always been joking about in the background. You know, me and him are having internal meetings, we're talking about it, but really it's MarTech. It's all this marketing technology that's out there, that's being thrown out there, that's new and creative and honestly saves you time and money, right? It's those typical things. And so what we really want to talk about is this sweet balance of technology, but then also the strategy and execution in really the use of this technology. And I know that's kind of broad, and to be honest, it might actually rustle some feathers of some of our audience because they may be in MarTech, and we're not trying to come here and say MarTech is useless. That is not the point of this. MarTech has purposes, but what we want to talk about is some of our gripes, how some companies that we have experienced are using MarTech and buying it, or buying it and not using it or understanding it, and go down that path. So James, you read this, or you found this interesting study, a Gartner study, about, marketers and their budgets and where it's going. Do you want to speak on that real quick?
Yeah, so, and I think this has been out for a little while. Gartner does their CMO study every single year, and they break down essentially how marketing budgets are being spent. And this year, one of the things that kind of came out, and it seems like it's been this way for a while, but it was kind of an eye-opening thing for me, is the fact that more than 25% of marketing, I think it's 27, 28% of marketing budgets are spent on tech. And it was a pretty even split between tech people, agencies, et cetera. But I do feel like it was eye-opening to me that marketers are spending so much on tech. And I can certainly see why that's the case. I think we're in a position now that there's more tech than ever. I mean, us as marketers, like, we have a million different problems that, all the wonderful SaaS companies out there in the world are working to solve for us. But I think that there is something that gets lost in the sauce there because, technology I feel like one of the things that we talk about the most is like technology isn't perfect, and using tools for what they're good for. And, I struggle with the fact that, I'm always reluctant to invest in new technology because I'll say, just again, being from the marketing side, most of the stuff that we deal with is like measurement and attribution technology or some sort of like workflow process technology. And on the workflow process side, I'm of the opinion that everything is pretty unique. And on the tech measurement side, I mean, I just feel like that system is so broken that it's impossible to fix at this point. So yeah, it was an interesting thing. And, us as marketers, with all the problems that we have, I think we go and we are chasing shiny objects. Shiny object syndrome is the fuel to the fire of the SaaS industry. And I think that it's just like important that we take a step back and do the right analysis and create business cases for the technology that we're looking at.
Absolutely. And, I want to make this clear too, like, we're not innocent here. We have also looked at various uses of technology. I mean, in this specific case, this isn't marketing technology, but how many pieces of technology have we gone through in this short period of having a podcast, right? And I think you said it a couple episodes ago, we're using a couple recording tools, editing tools, because You saw an ad, it looked cool, you tried the trial, then you bought an annual pass because it was cheaper, right? I mean, at the end of the day, that's exactly what's happening. And you're talking about this shiny object syndrome. So it's all about finding a balance of, are you actually going to use it? Are you going to take the time to understand how to use it? And at the end of the day, what is the purpose of it? Because I think that's one of the biggest pieces. There's so many tools out there that make our jobs easier, but we first need to understand like the core aspects and the common issues that we actually have, and do we need a solution for those issues? Some common ones as marketers that I can think of is coming up with new ideas, measuring results. That goes down to just attribution in general, which I know is your favorite thing to talk about on our podcast. But there is a lot of tools that can make our lives easier. And when I say there's a lot of tools, I mean, if you were to categorize it, there's like 4 types of tools, right? There's reporting tools, attribution tools, marketing automation tools, which are probably the most common that people know. And then likewise, some of the most popular and I should say up and coming that tend to be everywhere now are these AI tools. So I think it'd be beneficial to kind of lay them out. And then I do want to let you guys all know that James and I are going to talk about some of the tools that we are using and ones that we actually find useful and why we're using them, and why other ones we find are just complete bullshit and going to take your money. So some of the tools that we are using now are reporting tools. I feel if you're in any sort of business, whether you are in marketing or you're a business owner that is trying to measure anything, your reporting, you have to have a tool behind it. Now that could be something as simple as Google Analytics. You could go further though, into the reporting side of things.
Yeah, well, this is where, I'm a huge fan of reporting tools in the fact that, one of the things I'll talk about throughout this entire podcast here is just the idea of balancing the human element and technology. And the reality is reporting is one of those things that can be automated and should be automated. It should be automated in the fact that the faster that you can aggregate data and look and slice and dice things different ways, the more effectively your marketing team is going to be able to make decisions based on that data. I think it is some of the, like what you said, like the AI tools that are coming out now that are doing SEO copywriting for you and, workflow automations within like email marketing, like things like that. It's cool. It's helpful. At the same time, like if you're just saving time for like one single person, I don't see the value in it. I would rather have another creative human brain on the team versus a reporting tool is going to be something that everybody is going to benefit from.
Absolutely. Yeah. Talking about the AI tools, some of the ones I've seen coming up that just annoy the living shit out of me is we'll write your ad copy. Okay. If you want me to be honest with you, like Google Smart Campaigns can do that too. It's not good.
Yeah, but look at, and we're going to get into this a little bit next week, but look what Google puts out.
100%. I mean,
that's like my problem with automation.
Well, this is the problem with MarTech in general. You take the human elements out of it. And at the end of the day, right, when we're doing advertising or paid media of some sort, whether it is on Google, LinkedIn, maybe a programmatic aspect, the end user is another human. Like most other humans can understand if they're reading something that doesn't make sense. You can almost always tell what's coming from an AI. There are some AI out there that are really, really good, but I'm sure they still slip up, right? Grammatical errors or like the way a sentence flows, or if things just don't line up how they should in a sentence, or the messaging, like it's on point, but almost like if you hit in Google Translate like 6 times. That
people buy. That's like people buy from people. That's like 100%. It's so far. Like again, we're gonna talk. Like next week, we're gonna have a whole session on this. But like bid automation is like a huge thing in the paid media space. I mean, it's been a huge thing for a while. But the thing that those like bid algorithms don't take into consideration is like the quality of conversion data that they're reporting against. Like, oh, look, our responsive display ads got X many leads for us, but it's because the algorithm is optimizing towards a very specific spammy website in Nigeria that's driving a good CPL, but none of them are quality. Now they're working on, so they are, of course, technology is always advancing. That's a common complaint that everybody has. Like now there's integrations between Google Ads and HubSpot, Google Ads and Salesforce, and it's like helping with that kind of stuff. But it is, again, it's like one of those things where I think brands are moving so much in this tech space that everything is set it and forget it now. And when you have this set it and forget it mentality, like you need that human element to understand quality. I mean, from an advertising perspective, like I hate RDAs because they're ugly.
Yep.
And I feel like I almost feel that they are so ugly that every conversion that's attributed to them is fake, because like, I'm sorry, nobody's going to look at this like stock imagery and this AI created text and make a decision based off
But the
of it.
algorithm knows what the end user wants, and they're going to tailor it to them. That's how it's supposed to work, right?
Yeah,
But again,
some
what we're speaking on is you're trusting the AI to understand what a human wants. And now Google's algorithm is phenomenal. I mean, there's a reason Google is the powerhouse it is, and why their algorithm and how things work is so protected, and what maybe only a couple people on the entire planet truly know the algorithm, right? It's almost more secure than the nuclear codes. But like at this point, you have to understand that there's only so much algorithms can do. Humans understand how an image should look. And as an end user of multiple things, right? We were speaking on James, you purchased some things for the podcast. You were an end user for some sort of ad. Like I can tell you, you wouldn't have bought something that was misjumbled and oddly put together and random stock guy of a guy thumbs up and a logo type thing. Like, no, you're not going to do that. And that's something to keep in mind. So
the ads that I saw for the stuff that we purchased was like pretty damn good. Like,
that's awesome.
I mean, there was definitely some there was shout out to Riverside, because I was having like a meltdown around video quality.
Yep.
You know, our video guy is like kind of the expert in this stuff. He's like, oh, well, you know, you need to download it to an SD card and then upload it to your computer. And I'm like, I'm just trying to shoot a podcast. I don't have 8 hours to mash together 5 different Zendesk discs or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, that is not what I'm going to be doing. That's going to be the end of this podcast. I need to just download to my computer and in a format that I can edit 10 minutes later.
Absolutely.
Riverside has an ad, like they're just like, oh, you know, have good streaming quality up to 4K for all parties. And I was like, oh, that sounds good.
We tried it, and here we are. I mean, this is what we're recording right now.
Solves pain point. Yeah, I still got some things I need to sort out. Video quality wise.
We're both learning things with this new stuff, and we're going to be posting to social medias across, you know, more often. So be sure to follow us across our socials, whether that's TikTok, Instagram, all that things. You know, shameless plug. But back to kind of what we were talking about, right? So let's say you have all these things. Let's say you are, let's just say, a sucker, and you have bought AI tools. You have 4 different AI tools. You have some marketing automation tools. You have some attribution. You have an attribution tool, and you have a reporting tool, right? Really what it comes down to is now your entire office is using all these tools. What is the point of your employees? Right at this point,
are they?
Or what are they doing? Or are they even there
using it?
Yeah.
Well, the question is, are they using it? That's the
absolutely. But that brings up the question, right? What are the biggest headaches of bringing on more tools and tech and adding it to your suite and adding it to your workflow, right? Besides the aspect of not knowing how to use it, which you could argue is a factor of those issues, but also people are resistant to change. I mean, even without tools, people are resistant to change. I mean, I'll be honest, when they were saying they're getting rid of expanded text ads, I was like, why would they do that? Now, I think on some levels they've addressed some of those things, and we can get into that next week. But at the end of the day, right, those little changes, like people are naturally like, no, I've been doing this for so long, leave it alone. And so, of course, as an employer, if you bring in a new tool, one, you need to fully understand it yourself before you teach your team about it, or do a training session together where you can all ask questions together. Two, make it a part of the workflow, right? If you're going to
forced use,
yeah.
I'm on board with this. Forced use.
Make it happen. I know in a remote setting, it's hard to be like walking behind their desk and being like, hey, what you doing? What are you using? But there's some level where most things you can understand and track people's time and how they're using it, or you can tell based on what the tool is for. So that's one as well. The other one comes down to it's troubleshooting, which I think goes in the aspect of learning something new. If you don't have someone, let's say you purchase, and this most happens, I think, with marketing automation tools in our experience. Let's say they decide to buy Eloqua or HubSpot on those aspects. Are you going to hire someone who understands how to use these to its at least most capabilities? I'm not going to argue full capabilities. There's a lot of capabilities in there. But are you going to hire someone with experience in it that's utilized it in efficient ways, more than just being a simple user? There's a lot of things these tools can do. And if you don't hire the team behind it, it's just collecting dust in the cloud, right? And they're not cheap. So...
Well, it's fine. And this goes everywhere from, startups to enterprise level companies. Yep. I think we're, again, this is like agency pet peeve. Like you have all of our, a lot of our clients use Salesforce.
Yep.
And I feel like nobody on the marketing team really knows how to use anything in there. Yep. So it's like, we need to get this done. Well, okay, let's go to our Salesforce admin, and they have a full team of Salesforce people because the tool is that complicated. I think that, to your point,
well, think about it. On LinkedIn, and I haven't gone too deep, they have job titles you can target of Salesforce engineer. Yeah. It is almost a level of engineering. Maybe you don't have a full-on, master's or something like that in engineering for it, but they are called engineers. That's a rigorous title. Salesforce is so big.
Yeah. So Salesforce is obviously the extreme example, but I think this comes back to something we talked about in our last podcast is, let's step back and take the marketing perspective on all these, they're trying to sell us these tools. Like you said, the biggest barrier to entry is that resistance to change. Yep. And that resistance to change comes from the fact that I don't know how to use this tool. That's exactly where it comes from.
Yep.
And for anybody in any new piece of software, AI, whatever it is, you have to completely learn a new interface.
Yep.
How that interface works, what it all is, what are all the technical things that go along with it. Because a lot of these tools also come with, I'm going to say, baggage. Because startups are putting products to market so fast that solve for a very specific thing, but haven't thought of, the integration with this or the minor technical nuances. Mm-hmm. And as a consumer and somebody who would be interested in those things, I need to know that information before I get started.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think if more of these companies could offer onboardings and trainings to teams, they would probably have higher product adoption.
Absolutely. So James, specifically, we have a couple clients who utilize HubSpot. I would say it's probably one of the more popular, if not the most popular marketing automation tool. You could argue probably Marketo is up there as well. But HubSpot's very popular, been around for a while. They have pretty good market dominance. We have a lot of teams and clients that are utilizing it in some fashion that we go in and set things up for them. And we're not HubSpot experts. Do we know our way around to do things that we need to happen? Yeah, we've kind of had to force ourselves to that level. I'll be honest, James, you probably know more than I do on that. And I don't even know what that level is, but it's scary. At the end of the day, the biggest question I have is, why do they even have it at this point? If we're having to come in and do, what if we weren't here? What if we weren't your agency? Would another agency or another marketing partner be able to do this for you? You're going to hire someone? And this isn't a question that has to have an answer, because I don't think there is a perfect answer for that. But this is just a prime example of like, this is something we actively do for our clients on that level, is because they don't have it set up. It's just been sitting there, collecting e-dust. And we went in and wiped it off, got some of that pledge, wiped it up and cleaned it up a little bit. But
it's funny because HubSpot has the resources.
Huge
like
library.
If there's one thing that like HubSpot,
yes.
like HubSpot has but again, if you are a startup and you don't have all these resources built out, think about like, there are companies out there that have HubSpot, very popular tool, best resources, learning center that possibly I've ever seen for a tech software, and people still like don't use it. So think just like the barrier to entry there is like, you bring on people to use this tool, because I don't think that brands are thinking about this that often, because like, again, especially like startups, it's like, how do we get the initial sale? But these are huge things that lead to customer lifetime value. What we do, what we do as an agency every year? We go through the tools that we have at the end of the year, and we literally just kill stuff based on whether or not we used it.
Yep.
Because we do, like, I think part of being an agency, one of the unique selling points of having an agency is that we're going to have tools that you're not going to have in-house, right? So like for us, there is added motive to explore, look at different tools, test different tools. But, at the end of the year, it's like, oh, well, this seemed really cool and we thought it would solve this problem. But the reality is it's like, we used it for one thing throughout the entire year and then
Absolutely. Yeah. So one thing as well that I think is important to talk about, there's tools that we use that we rely on heavily, and actually reliancy, is that a word? Reliancy, I'm going to make it a word, is something that is also an added headache, right? You become super reliant on these tools. For example, I think we're very reliant on Google Analytics. I think that's something that I think most marketers will say that they're pretty reliant on. Again, huge market share. There's other analytic tools. Google Analytics is probably the most popular, right? Don't need to get into that. We're very reliant on it. Something breaks, it's kind of like an oh shit moment. We don't have, either a backup or, hey, we got to fix this right away. It's a very much an urgency thing. And so on that note, there's some things that we actively rely on in tools that break a lot. And we talk about it, but attribution is one of the biggest pain in the ass conversations to have, but it's because attribution reporting can break quite often.
Oh yeah. There's, especially like the larger the organization, the more chaotic it can be, right? Like you have the web team released a version of the website from like a year ago and all the coding got stripped, right? And then for us as an agent, we're working on an e-commerce brand and revenue went to zero, right? So now like our revenue went to zero, and you want to see like as this kind of trickles down and affects everything, like, okay, so we have conversion tracking set up that are now automated bidding algorithms are using that conversion data, but now those are broken because they have no data to optimize off of. And then like it just shit rolls downhill. And that's like being overly reliant on tech is definitely a concern, especially as things become more automated and more reliant on that tech. So like when it breaks, it makes things 10 times worse. I'll use paid search as an example, right? Where performance max campaigns, oh my goodness, these things just came out. There have been essentially Google's campaigns.
Save it for next week.
I'm gonna, but like, I just want to talk about like how this, again, shit rolls downhill. Traditionally, and we as an agency, search is a very effective way to capture demand for people who are already searching for your products or services, right?
Yep.
And strategically, when you have a human behind that, you could say, okay, yeah, our conversion tracking broke, but all of the keywords that we're targeting are the same. All of the placements that are targeting the same. Like, it didn't just stop driving results because conversion tracking broke, right? That's not what happened. Now you roll that into a performance max campaign where you have no control over where your ad is showing, what your messaging in your ad is, what keywords you're showing up for. Like, you have no control over anything. You're just saying, like, here, Google, throw this into your little black box and spit out results for me. Like, that's all well and good if it's like optimizing towards your conversion. That conversion breaks, you're just going to have a Wild West free for all, and you really don't know if your stuff is still working. Where on search, like, you could at least go back and say, like, oh yeah, it's still
serving.
They're still the right keywords. On paid social, you can say, hey, we're still serving our message to our ICP. Like, it's not like that stuff isn't going to break. Versus in this future of automation, I mean, who knows?
No, for sure. One thing that, if things are properly set up on some level, you may not have the physical reporting aspect or the attribution aspect, but again, utilizing both teams here, right? You should be able, especially if it's an e-commerce aspect, just because reporting or attribution stops, at the end of the day, if a purchase happens, right? It still goes through there, has to either be shipped or delivered in some digital format, right? So you can at least track that and hopefully attribute it back. Now, of course, it makes it hard, but you can still prove, hey, our stuff didn't stop, attribution stopped, but you're still seeing a constant flow of purchases or leads or things. So, there's multiple levels to this, as James was talking about. I think we've kind of talked about some gripes for a little bit now. I think what we should share is some of the core things that we find are valuable. Not necessarily has to be a necessity, but is highly recommended to be a part of, let's say, your MarTech suite or just technology suite in general. Getting down to the basics, CRM, right? You need to be able to keep track of your customers, on some level, prospects, leads. Even you could even talk about, prospective lists of just lists you've generated, right? I think that's one of the biggest necessity. I think that's almost a necessity. I would say that's a pretty big.
I mean, this is your CRM is how you measure revenue.
Yep.
Right. Like, that's how you get to see who your customer. I mean, that is where you house all of your first party data, and with cookies going away and like all that stuff that we talk about all the time, your CRM is your piece of gold at the end of the day, because it tells you who your customers are, why they purchased, when they purchased, who they spoke to, conversations with them. I mean, the tools do a lot. I mean, again, I think we're beating a dead horse here. Every company knows they need a CRM, but from a marketing perspective, you got to remember how important that information is.
Absolutely. Another one that I think helps speed up a lot of tasks and make life easier, especially on someone who does this on a monthly level, is automated reporting, which I think goes in line with an aspect of attribution technology. You need to be able to understand when you are, let's say, building a report, reporting data, understanding the entire journey of the data. Where did things start? Where did things end? What happened in the middle? Where are we seeing failures? Where are we seeing, pros, cons, what is working, what isn't working, right? We've talked about all of this in various attribution and conversations, so I won't get into the nitty gritty, but really, automated reporting and attribution technology, I think, are two of the more, again, not necessities, but highly recommended. Attribution, I would say, on a very higher level of necessity. Automated reporting is just very nice, as opposed to having to do everything manual and dig into the numbers yourself.
So let's I want to dive into attribution a little bit, because we did complain about it. We talk about the technology a little bit, but there's really three things that you need in there. You use them for different purposes, right? You have attribution through your CRM, which is probably the most important thing, because it is telling you what content is driving revenue. I think that that's just like super important, right? Hey, like, all of this revenue came from our demo. All of this revenue came from our free trial. All of this revenue came from somebody who just wanted to talk to sales. But what your CRM is going to tell you is what offers of yours are effective so that you can funnel more marketing activities around those specific call to actions, whatever you want to call them, right? So that's one, most important. The in-platform attribution for like ad platforms, email marketing, all of that stuff is also still important, right? It's not, we complain about it a lot. We say it's not good, cookies going away. Like, it's still good enough for you to make a decision, right? So like if you're optimizing your LinkedIn campaigns, like you can say, hey, we are struggling to convert this audience, but this audience is converting better. So let's funnel more money into that audience and work on adjusting our creative for this audience to try to create something that resonates more. Whether your CPA metric for whatever is perfect, no, it's not. It's actually typically probably going to be underreported because of just loss tracking. But at least you have the decision to make the data to make decisions off of, and it still works for that. And then the last piece is the self-reported attribution. Like I said, I'm a big fan of this because it's going to basically pick up everything else that's missing, right? You're never going to see attribution to a podcast, organic social, dark funnel stuff. Like, you're not going to see the attribution for that, but where you are going to see the attribution for that is in the self-reported attribution. So a lot of people say, oh, hey, we heard about Dragon 360 because of the podcast. Okay, well, that's good. Even though you showed up as organic search or paid search or whatever it may be in Google Analytics.
Yep.
So again, focuses on telling you the why of something that happened versus, hey, this person came to our website.
Absolutely. No, I think those are 3 great points. I think where we can also help here is how do we make these tech decisions? James, I'm not a part of the conversation, but I know you were saying at the end of the year, you and other members of the team, you go through various things we've either purchased, subscribed to, whatever, make decisions. And of course, I think in 2022, we internally have, I would say, slowed down on that level, but not in a bad case. And so I kind of want to get into how we make tech decisions. James, I know we talk a lot about different tools, different things like that in our meetings, but I think one of the biggest ones is there really a need? And I think if you were to think of this as, let's say, as a manager or a business owner, or even just a startup with multiple founders, whatever, right? You need to look at it almost as the same case of, should we hire a new employee? And you need to create the list, right? What is going to be the use of this employee? What purpose are they going to be fulfilling? Can this person or piece of technology fulfill these duties that we need to happen, right? And if you look at it as like this business case of employee versus technology, that'll give you a better, at least, understanding in your own mind of, one, am I going to fully utilize this piece of technology? Is it worth my investment? 3, what is it going to do for me internally? What can it take either off my plate, or how can it take my business to the next level, or department, if we were to get really granular, right?
Yeah, and there's so much that goes into this, and there's a couple things, right? So price point is obviously one of the most important factors when making a decision, right? So like, let me put it this way. If for this recording software that we're using for this podcast, like, no, I'm not comparing that against an employee versus, some of the attribution technology that's out there now is a couple $1,000s a month. And it's like, okay, is it worth a couple $1,000s a month to get 10% more accuracy? And those are the decisions that you have to weigh when making decisions. But the big thing that I always look for, because again, being in more of a senior manager position, a lot of these tools are brought to me saying like, hey, it would be really nice to have this. It would be really nice if we could do this. And, what I typically ask for our team, whoever's bringing the idea together, is to put together the business case for it. And put together, because again, what we talked about, all the software is about saving time and money, right? So I need you to put together a presentation for me on how this is going to save us time and money, and why it's worth our investment. And as an agency, a thing for me too is like, how am I going to make money off of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, some of the things that I really look for is like, more than one person going to benefit from this? Something like a automated reporting tool, everybody
will benefit,
is going to benefit from. Something like a copywriting tool. We have team members that are really good copywriters. We have team members who struggle with copy. Like, how many? I need to know, is this going to help everybody, or is this going to help one person?
Yeah, exactly.
And then I have to weigh out the cost against what that looks like. Is it difficult to use? I think that's like a huge, again, this is the number one pain point for SaaS companies. Is your stuff difficult? Not even is it difficult to use. It's new, different. Like, what are you going to do to make me being able to use this software super easy?
Or be able to also train your direct reports or the people that will directly be using it. As a decision maker, I think that's something that's important for you, right? When you make decisions is, hey, is Zach or someone else on the team, one, going to be able to use this, two, want to use this? Of course, there is the aspect of forcing someone to use something, but three, is it even worth their time to try and learn all these nuances when it's going to save them, let's say, maybe 10 seconds of work, right? Now, hopefully a piece of technology is going to save you more than 10 seconds, but at the end of the day, that is something you factor.
Remember the time to build up to that point too, right?
Absolutely.
Like, I understand that there's going to be a learning period, but let me put it this way. Like, our reporting tool that we use for data aggregation, I feel like I'm still learning.
Oh my gosh.
Of it.
Man, same here. Anytime I got to build something new, I'm just like, hey, what's this? It's almost like shiny object syndrome inside the tool. And I'm like, I really wish someone would have told me about this instead of having to build my own formula for this. And, there's a whole bunch of things that I discovered too. We do have someone on the team, luckily, who I deem our expert. But even then, I feel like he's still learning things. And it speaks back to, like, where are the resources? Now, you can always reach out. I'm sure there is some sort of resource somewhere, but do you want us to spend an hour to try and find that resource, or, different things like that? I think a big one as well with a lot of technology solutions is, and I've noticed this with even our clients that are SaaS based, is the terms, things that are more, I think, easier to understand and try are those that you can do on a monthly basis, right? I think most marketing technology wants you to do annual, right? And I think that's one of the biggest ones. Is it's hard to digest a new piece of technology that you may or may not know much about outside of maybe a sales conversation, maybe an ad, maybe a group of ads that you've read, maybe you did peruse the website a little bit or do some sort of free trial. But an annual subscription, especially if there's a contract behind it where there might be some cancellation issues, I think that's hard to take a leap on. I think that is probably one of the biggest deterrents, from my understanding, of why we look at technology a little differently as well. What was nice, I believe Riverside and one of our editing tools, they had monthly options, right? I think we went the annual route just because we saved it. One, it wasn't super expensive for the annual, from my understanding, but two, I mean, you save money. So there was that value there, and we knew we were going to use them because we were looking for something exactly for this, solve the issue. But let's say you are HubSpot coming to me, I'm a startup, you want an annual contract, and I'm like, I've never used you before. Now I have to hire someone who maybe does know how to use it. That's a lot. That's a big commitment.
Yeah, something like that. I get that it's a big investment and there's a big commitment. But here's where I struggle with, again, us as an agency. our contracts are month to month or quarterly. That's how they're structured, right? If there's a new attribution tool that I want to test for one of my e-commerce clients, I can only commit to a contract that is what follows my clients. Because that client drops, then I'm not sitting on that tool for a year, right? So I don't know. Month to month is always the best thing. I mean, if you're committing to HubSpot or Salesforce, like that's kind of a different scenario.
Maybe that
but even
wasn't
like
the best example in this case, but the idea is there.
yeah, no, for sure. I get it, and that's where like committing to like I am a big fan of like having a year-long commitment versus a month-to-month commitment. Like again, being agency side, and this is something that we talk about offering or doing all the time, but we have clients that we've worked with for like 4 or 5 years. Like at this point, like we have it doesn't really matter to us because they've stuck around. They like working with us. I mean, some clients, even I think we have clients that have been around for 9-10 years. But like, I would love to go to that client and say like, hey, I'll give you 10% off if you just sign for the whole year. You've been a client for 10 years. Like, you're going to change that? No, I don't think so. Versus, or even, giving that option after 1 year. But I would never go in with like, hey, you're brand new. You just started working with us. Do you want to sign a year-long contract? Because, we need proof of concept first.
So, I mean, as we've been talking about, there's a lot of things with marketing technology that you have to consider. We've been talking about, pros, cons, things we recommend, things we use internally, and what we really find necessity inside of an organization, whether it's small, large, corporation, whatever, right, global. But I think, in summary, bringing this to a close, you can't replace the human side of marketing. I think that's probably the most important thing to take from this is that humans buy from humans. And I think you nailed that perfectly earlier on when you said that, because it is so true. Yes, tech can save time, and that's not a bad thing, but it rarely adds the creativity, the insightfulness, the ideas that can prosper from working hands-on yourself. So you have to use them in conjunction and make sure that the technology is really just there to help you be better at what you're doing now, not necessarily fully replace your entire job, right? You could argue the automated reporting may counter argue that, but at the end of the day, we've shared why we like automated reporting. Again, we've made this very clear. People buy from people. This is true across almost any market, whether you are e-commerce, a retail storefront, but specifically, in B2B markets. When you're targeting other businesses, you're going to be meeting with a higher up leader who's going to want to talk to someone who's very real and can speak to their exact pain points of why they may actually utilize you. And at the end of the day, we've talked about this a lot with attribution and reporting. How much data do you really need? How accurate does it really need to be? Nothing will ever line up. James has said that a million times across our probably 15 episodes now. The data is never going to line up one-to-one. You have to take it at that level, but it gives you a better understanding, and you don't need to get way deep in the weeds of too much data in front of you where you get lost yourself. So I think we were to summarize it, right? Be smart with your technology. Yes, we all have shiny object syndrome. Literally, we talked about how James has it for our specific podcast and things we've utilized. When it comes down to other things, I am the exact same way. So it's in all of us. We just have to be smart about how we look at it. Be smart for your business. And if I were to close with anything, I think the key thing here is you cannot replace the human side of marketing. And I think that needs to be a t-shirt. We'll add that to our collection. Can't replace the human side of marketing. So thank you so much for joining us. As we alluded to, next week we're going to have actually, I believe, 2 guests with us that are from our internal team as well, that we're going to be talking about, the Google, where it's at, where it was, and really what we think the future of Google and search marketing is. And I think it's going to be a fun conversation. So we hope to hear and see from you next week. And be sure to follow us across, again, all of our socials, because we're going to be posting there more often of easy to digest little clips for you. So thanks so much and have a good one.
Thanks for listening to Digital Banter. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes are uploaded every Friday. In the meantime, keep up with the show by following James and Zach on social media. Links are in the show notes.